Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin. And today, we're also joined by Mr. Mike Thomas, joining us again from Collider / the Chatter After podcast / the Amateur Otaku podcast. This man is everywhere on the interwebs, y'all. And today, we're eager to give our spoiler-free thoughts on the first episode of the John Wick limited series, The Continental, and episode 1 is titled Night 1. This is a 3-part limited series that is going to be streaming on Peacock starting on September 22nd, and this will be a weekly release. So they're doing Night 1, September 22nd, and then the following week, September 29th, all the way through October 6th. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. So, Mike, glad to have you back on, as always. It feels like you never left, but it is what it is. How have you been, buddy? And what have you been watching this week? And how's your week been?
It's been going great. You know, it's good to be back. What I've been watching The Bear, trying to knock out season 2. And I can finally talk about it. One Piece, the live action One Piece is actually really good.
It's taking over the world.
Yeah, as somebody who doesn't care about the anime or the manga, like those 8 episodes are really entertaining. It's a great like swashbuckling adventure. So yeah, I guess I'm doing my otaku diligence and coming over here to preach and spread the gospel of One Piece.
Isaac would be proud.
Don't tell him I said any of this, please.
Hey, that's fair, man. I'm glad that you're having a great time with One Piece. I've not checked it out just yet. I'm always so hesitant when it comes to live. I've been burned. We've been burned too many times, and I'm like, maybe
this
is
the one. This is the one.
I thought Avatar was supposed to be the one.
Avatar hasn't come out yet. As of now, this is the one.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Devin, what's going on, buddy? How's your week been, and what have you been watching lately?
It's been a solid week. We're only halfway there. It's hump day. We're getting through it. But yeah, I watched this Continental episode last night. Nice long intro, long premiere for this one. And I think they're all 3 episodes are this long, so it's definitely going to be a ride. But yeah, not much other than that. A lot of football this weekend.
I just have to say, my roommate is a Chicago Bears fan, and Mike, of course, is a Packer fan. He was so excited. He was like, oh my gosh, the Packers don't have Aaron Rodgers this year. And that's a whole nother story that happened with Aaron Rodgers.
That was insane.
I know. But yeah, my roommate was so excited. Like,
I have a soft spot for the Bears too, because I lived in Chicago for a few years, but they just cannot figure it out.
They can't, man. Are they the new Browns? I feel like they might. I mean,
the Browns are always the Browns.
Hey, man,
they're not going anywhere.
It's funny how the Bengals paid all this extra money for Joe Burrow right before the season.
I love how we're having a conversation that by the time this embargo lifts, we're gonna be like three games deep in the season.
Yeah,
everyone's gonna know what we're talking about.
We'll have some more information.
This isn't necessarily that evergreen, but since we're recording this on September 13th, 2023, just want to throw that out there.
Aaron Rodgers' injury is definitely evergreen. That's the only one we know.
Yes. Yeah, as of now.
Poor guy.
I saw a little clip. It was like highlights of Aaron Rodgers' 2023 career, and it was him just running out the American flag.
Yep.
The Jets fans cannot catch a break.
I wonder if he'll be using modern medicine to help, or if he's just going to wing it with some home remedies.
He's going to wing it, He's just going to find some medicinal herbs in his garden, and that's going to fix the Achilles right up.
Just like that.
That is rotten luck, though. I feel so bad for him.
I feel bad for Jets fans, but
I feel more, definitely. Mike's like, hey, we had him for a while.
Oh, look, listen, I'm mad. I'm livid because we lose a draft pick because of this. The Packers needed him to play 65% of Jet snaps, and he only played 4. Everybody gets screwed.
Well, my heart condolences go out. Hey, we lost pretty bad to the 49ers. That was not a good game, a good home opener for the Steelers, but it is what it is. But I digress with all the sports chat. It's always great to catch up with it, though, even though, like Mike and Devin said, within like the next few weeks, by the time this comes out, it's not even going to matter. But hey, that's the beauty of batch recording and just recording things early, which is really, really nice. Helps us, maintain a somewhat sane schedule. So we got all that. But
somewhat.
Yeah, I know. Emphasis on somewhat. On top of everything else that we're trying to do. I'm blowing through these Naruto movies, Mike. I am flying right now.
Not the bio.
But as we mentioned before, this is going to be a spoiler-free review of the Continental episode 1. Again, episode 1 will be streaming on Peacock on September 22nd, Friday, September 22nd, 2023. Again, this is spoiler free, so we're not going to be spilling the tea. We have been given all 3 episodes, but again, we're only going to be covering episode 1. Just want to make that super clear for everyone out there, because you never know. Some people just some people listen to a podcast and it becomes like background noise. And that's happened to me before. Like I'll tune out from the podcast. I'm like, wait, what did they say? I'm like, oh, okay. They're reiterating. So that's the only reason why I'm stressing this altogether. But with all that said, we'll be right back after this introduction to our coverage of the Continental episode 1.
This sacred institution wields power beyond your imagination. Winston, your brother stole something from me. What he took is very important to a lot of very dangerous people. Find him, because if you don't, I'll bring the weight of this whole institution down on you both. Sharon, show our guests the door.
And we are back with our The Continental episode 1 spoiler-free review. The creators of the show include Greg Coolidge, Sean Simmons, and Kurt Ward, and stars Mel Gibson, Colin Woodell, and Michelle Prada, just to name a few. There's a lot of talent in this series, specifically episode 1. That we're going to be talking about here today. And the synopsis is as follows. The Continental is a chain of hotels located around the world that function as a neutral territory for members of the criminal underworld. They are frequented by many hitmen and notorious murderers, which doesn't give us a lot of information. It's kind of just what the building of the Continental is, which I think is kind of perfect because there's a lot that happens within this first episode. And I think the runtime is pushing or actually hits around an hour and 30 minutes, which is around the same runtime for episode 2 and 3, I believe, or somewhere around there. But
roughly the same. Yeah.
Roughly the same. Okay. See, now I thought they were like an hour long. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, no, I'm like, definitely an hour has passed by. I was like, oh, there's 30 minutes left. But I was like, okay, that's fine. It's totally cool. Because I thought, at least for the first episode, I've not watched episode 2 or 3 yet, but I thought it was pretty well paced for the most part. So to kick things off, we're going to get into our spoiler-free thoughts of episode 1 of the Continental. I'm going to pass it over to Devin first, and then I will go, and then we're going to hit Mike last. So Devin, what are your thoughts on the Continental episode 1?
Yeah, I feel like this series really snuck up on us because we know there's a couple John Wick spin-off type series in the works, and maybe even that ballerina movie, I believe it's going to end up being. But yeah, definitely was very excited for this one. Being a huge John Wick fan, always loved being in this world. And I think this first episode did a great job of world building as per usual in the John Wick franchise, and just setting up these new and existing characters. Like, it's so cool to see. We get a young Winston in this one. We get a young Sharon in this one. Just some familiar faces once you kind of get past the 70s setting and how young they look compared to usual. The 70s settings definitely helps with the soundtrack as well. It's a great soundtrack, a lot of good tunes played throughout, and then obviously there's some great action throughout as well. Not going to spoil too much, but I think the first part of the episode, there's a great heist type of mission going on. In the middle, you get more of the character building and world building. Then towards the end, you get kind of a resolution for the first episode that sets up the next episode. I'm also curious to see what you guys think. I'm not sure. This is an interesting setup for a series where you have 3 different nights as the 3 different episodes, and they're each, like you said, around an hour and a half long. I'm kind of curious what it was like in that writer's room to decide that setup, because I feel like if you would have cut them in half, you could have had a 6-episode series, a bit more normal of a setup for a series, but I guess this is more of a limited time event than anything, so I'm curious to see how it goes, but it's definitely a good start.
I agree with you, Devin. There's a way to break down this first episode, and I know when we were talking about John Wick 4, my only criticism that I had was that it was too long. But to be fair, I didn't know it was 3 hours going in because I went to my screening and I was like, yeah, we're going to watch John Wick 4. It's going to be, I don't know, like 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and a half, a cool 2 hours and a half. And they're like, oh no, it's like 3 hours. I was like, oh boy, I was tired from work. And I was like, today's probably not the best day for me to watch this, but I have to watch it anyway, because that's when our screening was. But for this series, since these are 3 nights and they are hovering around an hour and 30 minutes, I went into this first episode with, I mean, I knew of the series, but I didn't like watch any trailers or do any prior research. The only thing I knew is that, yeah, this was supposed to be, a Winston journey with him and his brother. And I absolutely love the first episode. I thought it was perfectly paced. You start things off with, introducing Winston and his brother. It's not Richie. Frankie. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting the bear and Richie,
Cousin.
Frankie, cousin. So Frankie and Winston, it kind of shows their upbringing and goes from there. And I absolutely love the world building for anyone who even has not seen any of the John Wick movies. I think watching this, you can still understand what the Continental is. And it probably actually might help you get into the movies. Like you'll go in with a little bit more prior knowledge.
Yeah, you could watch this before the movies and it'd be a nice setup.
I think it will definitely enhance like your viewing of the movies, even watching the Continental first, instead of obviously, the John Wick movies came out first and then watching the Continental. But all these characters, between Frankie and Winston, the 2 brothers, and these new characters that we've never seen before, it felt like, that obviously the 1970s vibe, but I don't know if this is like a weird take, but like I got a little bit of like that like cyberpunk, like 70s, like I guess not cyberpunk, maybe Grand Theft Auto vibe.
I was getting Umbrella Academy vibes back when they had the time traveling.
Yeah. That I can see that as well. But yeah, there was
got
like
that pulpy feel to it that I appreciate.
Yes. That's a really good way to explain it. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, like the whole Pulp Fiction, like almost like a vintage vibe to it, even though, this is something that was shot in 2023, or probably prior to 2023. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. Like at first I was like, oh, I don't know if this is like, it's just too long. And then by, I would say literally within the first scene, I was like, yeah, like I'm in for the ride. And then it just got better and better and better with each and every passing scene. I absolutely loved it. And like Devin said, it sets you up perfectly for the next episode because there is a major cliffhanger that happens. And you guys know how much I love my cliffhangers, whether they're movies or television. You know, I love a good cliffhanger. And I think episode 1 does it beautifully. And I can't wait to explore more. I kind of want to watch episode 2 tonight, but I got to finish the bear first.
That last line hits so hard without spoiling it, but
just, yeah, it does. It so
perfect.
Just, yeah. And then, you know, people are going to watch that and be like, okay, I'm ready for week 2. And that is a good mark of a television show, albeit, you know, this is the first one of 3, but usually like, you know, within those first like 1 to 2, maybe 3 episodes, or at least the first episode, it's like, hey, this is what we have. We only have a limited amount of time to tell this story. And like Devin was saying, I don't know how they decided to like split up each episode, but I feel like, and I'll bring this up later, it's more so like a Disney thing. I'm like, maybe Disney should do this for their limited series, make it like a 3-part event so that it feels like a movie and a television show at the same time. But I'm going to pass it over to Mike so he can give his initial reactions to episode 1 of The Continental.
Yeah, this is a show that's been on my radar for a while. We got to see that first action scene that Devin was alluding to at Comic-Con. They showed it to us.
Nice.
Then the directors came out and they talked about it, the producers. And it was really interesting hearing their approach to the show because they wanted it to feel like it took place in the John Wick universe, but they still wanted it to be its own thing, right? And I think they found that perfect balance of it. It definitely is the Continental, and this does feel like it's a part of the John Wick franchise, but there are a lot of comedic moments. There's a lot of action moments and scenes that don't necessarily fit the tone of the John Wick movie franchise in a good way. And I think that is a testament of how strong this show is on its own. I agree. You don't need to watch the John Wick movies to understand what's going on here. It does help to understand some bits of information, I guess, about how the Continental works and all the people who are involved with it. I think the show does a really good job of introducing us to Frankie and Winston and Sharon, and we kind of like establishing, yeah, these are a couple of names or faces you may be familiar with, but we're going to take it in a completely different direction. I love the 3-night premise. I think it allows each episode to feel like an event, which is the entire point, right? I appreciate Peacock for having the guts to do that, because they could have just cut this down the middle, right? Make them like 55 minutes apiece, give us like 7 episodes. And they could have done that Disney, like you were saying, Christian, that Disney thing where no episode really feels satisfying on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But instead, they found a really good balance, and I appreciate that a ton. And I love how stylized this show is, from like the opening credits and the music, like you were saying, Devin, the needle drops. It feels very, very stylized in a fun way. And so I can't wait to jump into the rest of this series.
So Mike actually brings up an interesting point, and I think this is a good time to bring up Game of Thrones again, because I love bringing up Game of Thrones. When it comes to the House of the Dragon, you know, that is a prequel series to Game of Thrones, albeit that is around 170 something years before the birth of Daenerys Targaryen. Yep. But even though, you know, everyone knows what Game of Thrones is, you have a prequel series, and it felt like House of the Dragon. It felt like Game of Thrones, but it also felt like its own thing. And that's what I like about the Continental. And I think people will be able to digest this a little bit more, albeit, you know, there's only 3 episodes, but, you know, it's telling more of a linear story. With House of the Dragon, there's a lot going on. And, you know, for Thronies out there, they know what's happening. But for the Continental, I think it's going to hit for Peacock, because I didn't know. Like, I don't take Peacock like that seriously when it comes to streaming.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. This could be like the thing that kind of boosts the Peacock up to somewhat the level of the other streamers we have, because I saw it was really supposed to be a Stars show. Like, it was supposed to come out on Stars because the John Wick IP franchise rights get passed like back and forth between all the different studios and streamers. So it was smart of Peacock to scoop this one up, because I think this could be one that definitely puts them on the map. Because I know Twisted Metal had a bit of a mixed reaction, but somewhat positive from what I saw. But this could be the one for them.
It definitely could. I mean, and Devin actually has already dived into the Peacock pool and has watched Poker Face, which was...
They got a nice catalog building up now.
Yeah, which is, I think, actually, as of today, September 13th, 2023, I believe you can actually buy Poker Face on Blu-ray. Ryan Johnson actually tweeted it out, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, awesome. Yeah, I know. All right, I'll give it a shot. But no, yeah, what Devin was saying, because I think Lionsgate is the studio behind the John Wick franchise, and since they don't have their own streaming service, and I don't think they need their own because we have too many already, I think this is a great pull for Peacock, for people to start taking it a little bit more seriously. I think because it's essentially free if you have cable, that people don't really pay that much of mind to it. I think the only other thing I've actively watched on Peacock was, oh my gosh, what was, I think, was They/Them? Was that on Peacock, Devin?
Yeah, that was a Peacock one. That was Peacocky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we got screeners for that, so I didn't even technically log into Peacock to watch it.
I don't think I've ever watched anything on Peacock except for like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Office.
I think, the movie Sick, Devin,
yeah,
that movie was on
one.
Peacock. Yeah, so I have also dabbled in Peacock a little bit here and there.
I might dive into Twisted Metal. I heard some good things towards the end of the review cycle for it.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I got you. I don't know if I'm going to watch that, but I think I also watched Halloween. One of the Halloween movies that they did a dual release. I think it was Halloween's End, because I think I watched it once in theaters and then I watched it again at home just to like make sure that, yeah, I think that was it. But yeah, I have dabbled in Peacock a little bit, but I think Devin has more so. I think everyone is still signed up for Peacock to watch The Office for like the upteenth time. Like, I don't even know. It's weird. But I wanted to pass it back over to you guys. Is there anything else you wanted to mention in our spoiler-free review of the Continental before we close out for today?
Mel Gibson kind of over the top in this one so far. Obviously, he's got a checkered past. So there's always that, but definitely playing the over the top like mob boss type.
I like him though. I do like him. I was surprised to see him in here because again, didn't know that he was actually in this series because I did not do a lot of research beforehand. I kind of just wanted to go into it blind, and I've been
he's
trying
kind of
to
the
do
big
that.
name they just had to attach, just kind of
Weird to put all the cards on the table, push them on. It's kind of weird to push all the chips into the middle of the table for Mel Gibson.
Yeah, that's what my original thought was when they first announced it. I was like, really? That's what we're doing?
Yeah, like if we needed a big name, I feel like we could have looked elsewhere, but I digress. Not get into that.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it is what it is. But Mike, do you have anything else you wanted to add before we close out here today?
Action is great. I'd say it's on par with John Wick. So if that's what you're looking for, it's definitely here. I also think the cast is phenomenal. You know, it's hard to cast characters like Winston and Sharon because they're characters we are familiar with. We've watched them in 4 movies now, right? So those are kind of big shoes to fill, but I think the entire cast in this show has done a phenomenal job thus far. They have a lot to work with in the 90 minutes we see. You know, we get a decent sample size. So I think cast is great, action's great. I love the tone, the setting. All of that stuff is refreshing. It has really great character moments too going forward, looking to the future. I'm a little bit ahead of you guys, but as of right now, I'm just going to say it, non-spoiler, this is my least favorite episode. of the Continental.
Oh, that's good news.
Okay. Wow.
So-
okay.
That's good. We like to hear.
It's a good show.
And that is a great place to end. So that concludes today's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard on today's episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to spread the love of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And before we get into what's coming up next on the show, I want to pass it back over to Mike so you can let everyone know where to find you online and what is coming up next for you that's within this range. I know we're recording this a little bit early, but Mike, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, I'm like Roy Kent. I'm kind of here, there, everywhere, you know. You can find me on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling that, at Novice Cinephile. Everywhere else, The Novice Cinephile, Threads, Instagram, yada, yada, yada. On the YouTube side of things, I'm reacting to Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead on my channel, Novice Cinephile. On the Chatter After, movie reviews, we're talking the Continental over there. Spoilers in depth when those episodes drop. Stay tuned for that. On the Amateur Otaku, we're still talking One Piece. We're going to be talking Naruto's 20th anniversary. Christian, you're joining us for Naruto movie tier lists.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot. There's a lot. I'll just put it that way. But yeah, so if you into anime, check out the Amateur Otaku, wherever you get your podcasts. Same for the Chatter After if you're into movies, TV, all that jazz. And of course, my writing at collider.com. I'm actually reviewing the Continental. So that review, by the time you're listening to this, is probably already up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'll be out because everyone's, you know, it's embargo day, you know, for a brand new show. It's so weird because like I can't say that September is a light month when it comes to movies, but there's a lot of movies like outside of the first week of September where I was like, I can pass on like 4 of these and be totally fine. And, you know, everyone has their own taste for movies. Like, you know, when it comes to Haunting in Venice or The Exorcist Believer or The Nun 2, I'm just not like super into those horror movies. I love horror movies, more so slashers, probably more than anything else. But those kind of horror movies can like stay over there, at least for me. At least for me, that is for me and for me only. So really quick, want to let everyone know what is coming up next on our show, what you can listen to right now. So what you can listen to for our new review releases, we have our Bottoms spoiler-free review that Devin and I covered together. We also covered Ahsoka episode 3 and 4 a few days ago. We are a little bit behind on that, but you know, we were trying to maneuver around some things because again, due to some circumstances on my side, there's just not, I didn't really care for those, like The Nun and all that stuff. I was like, well, if people are liking it, that's all that matters. But you can also check out our favorite films and TV shows from 2023 so far, which Mike, of course, has actually joined us on as well. So those are a few things you can check out now that are on the podcast, and a few things that are coming up next. As we mentioned, we will be covering the Continental episode 2 and 3 on a weekly basis, as well as is it Gen V or is it just Gen 5?
Gen V.
For Gen V for the Boys spinoff series. In the works for that, as well as a new movie from Hulu/Fox called No One Can Save You, starring Miss Caitlin Dever. Very excited. I don't know how it's going to be, but sometimes you got to just roll the dice. If you see one of your favorite actors in something, you're like, you know what, that looks pretty cool. Let me check that out. So those are a few things on our side that you can look forward to coming up on the podcast. Again, thank you all for listening. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure to stay connected with us by following us on Twitter for the latest updates. That was Devin, Mike, and I'm Christian signing off. And remember, Life is like a movie, so go out there and make it a blockbuster.
Peace.